Next up, the HRO Today Flash Report, How Companies Invest and Measure the Impact of Employer Branding, sponsored by PeopleScout, examines how organizations measure the impact of their employer branding activities and ways they invest in those brands. Best practices are shown by comparing those that consider their employer brand a high priority versus those attaching less significance to it. Presenting these findings will be Angela Wilkinson, Executive Leader and Group Managing Director of Europe and Asia Pacific at PeopleScout. Andrew?
Good afternoon, everybody. It is almost break time, so I've seen that the coffee, tea, cakes are all outside. So this is the last presentation. I just think we need a little bit of light relief. So I think on your tables, you'll all find one of these. And I think if you squeeze it, it makes a noise. So I think if we all just have a little squeeze, just to kind of... Okay, there we go. I just think we needed something, just to break the ice a little bit. Anyway, let's see if I can use this. There we go. The purpose of this presentation is to really share the results of some research that we did with HRO Today, measuring the impact of employer brand. I think this is a really big topic and one that's probably quite difficult to cover off in 10 minutes, as actually I would find explaining Brexit in 10 minutes equally as challenging. But what we have got is a report. The report is in the June edition of the HRO Today magazine. It's also available on the HRO Today website. So please feel free to go and access that report and download it. But the truth is, wherever you look, employer brand is a hot topic. These quotes from LinkedIn, Gartner, Mercer, they all highlight the importance of employer branding. And the headlines really do support the findings that we had from our own research. But I think the thing that captures it most for me is the quote from Gartner, where it talks about talent acquisition and finding scarce talent as now the number one risk facing most companies. And that's actually up from being the third highest risk in their last report. So it really does capture the importance and the impact of employer branding. Many of you will be aware of the positive impact a strong and managed employer brand can have. So it can improve the financial performance from higher quality, higher performing employees. It can increase or decrease attrition, increase retention from more commitment. It can improve your kind of message in the marketplace from employee advocacy. And actually a well-managed employer brand also gives you higher attraction reach. So there are many advantages of a strongly managed employer brand. But why is it important? I think what you can see here is that the landscape in which we try now to reach talent and the landscape in which an employer brand reaches out is now as complex as it's ever been and probably getting more complex by the month. So in all these different channels and places, your brand is evident. And it is either managed by you or not managed by you. But the job seeker, the talent you're trying to find, is going to find out something, and whether that's what you would like them to find out or whether it isn't, is really dependent on what priority, what impact you want your employer brand to have. And just to be clear about perhaps what we see as a managed employer brand, there are a number of steps that we feel a high priority, a good employer brand needs to go through to be fully established and robust. It's about getting great insight into who you are and what your aspirations are and how you can articulate them. And we believe there's a number of components that you go and work on to build that out. So you build your pillars, which are the core components of your proposition, and you turn that into a narrative, a kind of single paragraph which starts to bring out what those kind of key features are of your employer brand, and then potentially put a concise phrase together, something that you can really use with impact in the marketplace. And what these give you is relevance, consistency and focus, and actually a well-articulated EVP is really the bedrock of a well-managed employer brand. And if you get these features right, and if they're well documented, then what that allows is the same story to emerge from all sources that a candidate may come across. So whether that's talent acquisition professionals in your own business, external recruiters and agencies, RPO providers and MSP providers, or just your own hiring managers, what that would mean is there's a solid and dependable and consistent story that allows your employer brand to really emerge and be powerful. And the research that we conducted with HRO today shows that in many organisations where the employer brand is a high priority, there are some key features that are consistent. One of those is that the fact that talent acquisition, HR and marketing are all highly aligned and work well together. They are organisations that typically invest more in their employer brand. They are seeking to differentiate themselves. The results of that are somewhat questionable for some organisations, and we'll come on to that in the next slide. But they also see the value of employee advocacy, their own internal people that are able to express what the employer brand is and share that amongst their own communities. But also they want to measure results and see how the employer brand is impacting on talent acquisition. So this was the slide that I was going to refer to. So what this says is 13% of those that see employer branding as a high priority believe that it distinguishes them amongst their competitors. But I'd rather look at it the other way round, and that says that 87% of organisations actually don't believe that the way that they have developed their employer brand, it is fully distinguishing them from their competition. And what we realise is that in the war for talent that exists out there, with the scarcity of skills in many areas, locations, that actually if you can't differentiate yourself from another competitor, why would the best talent come to work for you? So I think this just highlights a challenge around how perhaps that employer brand, the EVP, is being constructed. Is it taking on board the aspirations and the vision of a business? Is it honest and authentic in the way that it is gathered insights from the internal workforce? Is it really clear what the external perceptions are already and the perceptions that you're seeking to shift? And has it really mapped out what the competition is saying and how you can truly differentiate your organisation through your employer branding? So I think that for the 87% of organisations, there's a kind of question around the depth of insight and whether or not they need to revisit the articulation of their EVP to better distinguish themselves in the market. But in terms of those that see employer branding as a high priority, only 20% of them have established metrics. And these are the metrics that they're often using, so social engagement rates, career site traffic, outbound recruiter response, so a number of different things there. But perhaps I was surprised when I looked at the research to see that things like attrition rates, which obviously determine the quality of hire, the relevance of the hire, and also the cost of talent acquisition were perhaps things that weren't being measured in this list. But there is one thing that everyone agreed on, and that is that employer branding is truly important to talent acquisition. There was not a single disagreement from our audience around that. And when they look at the tactics that those that see it as an important priority, these are the tactics that they're using. And one of the things I think that they're often looking for is increased engagement and advocacy from their employees in terms of how they can support talent acquisition. They're also looking at campus recruitment and using internal comms so that the employees better understand what it is that makes them attractive as an employer. And I think the candidate experience is something that we all know is truly important in today's recruitment process. What this should be is a series of interactions from applicants where at each stage they are building a deeper insight, a deeper awareness and a deeper engagement with each organisation as a potential employer. It should be consistent, whether they're reading employee comments in LinkedIn, whether they're reading social media posts, or whether they're engaging with the careers website. One would like to think that that candidate experience is something that is building, and over the course of their recruitment process, their engagement with a potential employer is growing all the way through. And finally, just to look at, the employer brand is something that has huge power. If you look at the right-hand side of this slide, what you can see is where employer branding can be evident externally. So as you gain awareness with your talent audiences, as you actually go through the process of attraction and actually recruitment, bringing your employer brand to life in all these different channels is hugely important and a great opportunity. But the left-hand side is just reinforcing the impact that a good employer brand can have through all the different channels, through employees, and how you can engage with them, use the same narrative, use the same communication and the same language, so that your employer brand is better understood by your employees. And that employee advocacy piece that many people mention is an important part of having an impact with employer brand can be maximised through the work that you've done. So a quick overview of the outputs of the research. As I say, the full document is available on the HRO Today website, or it's going to be published in the June magazine. But hopefully I've given you some insight into what people think, where it can have impact, and perhaps some of the challenges that we all face as we look to build and manage our employer brands in the marketplace. Thank you very much.